Thank you for joining this review of our Life Application Bible study. We have started a new topic in which we are studying together how to discern the voice of God. The society in which we live today is definitely full of a lot of voices and influences. We find these voices and influences in the civic context, but also in the religious context. There are so many people who claim to speak for God, as well as those who offer the claim that they have heard from God. And so even as we deal with that, it is true that God speaks to us, and it is important for us as believers to understand that God does speak to us. And as God speaks to us, one of the things we want to do is that in the midst of all of these influences and voices that are out there, is for us to be able to understand, to be clear that it is the voice of God that we're hearing. To start this course of study, we began by looking at Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. And it is within that chapter that we deal with the fall of humanity and sin. We're very familiar with the whole creation story, as well as the events and the activities that took place within the Garden of Eden. And even in Genesis chapter 3, it is where the serpent began to speak to Eve. And in doing so, what the serpent did was sought to question God's voice, sought to question what God had said, and in doing so, sought to plant some uncertainty. Eve responded in a way in which she tried to offer, this is what God had said, what God had commanded. But in doing so, Eve actually displayed an uncertainty that she really had not heard all of what God had said. And so it made her alter what God had said. It made her add to it. It made her change what God had told Adam and Eve, what they could eat and what they couldn't eat. In response to what Eve had offered in representation of God's word, the serpent came back and actually tried to deny the truth of God's word, of trying to say that what God said would happen would not happen. And when it comes to you and I discerning the voice of God, one of the things that we must recognize is that the Bible will offer confirmation of God's voice, because God's voice will never contradict the Bible. And so it's so important for us to make sure that we are studying God's word, that we are learning God's word. And Life Application Bible Study gives us an opportunity to come together to be able to do that very thing, to study God's word and to grow in knowledge of God together. I look forward to continuing in this study, and there's some upcoming topics that includes, does the voice bring conviction? Does it align with God's character? Does it encourage you and I to trust God? For when we deal with the voice of God, God's voice is always going to be about bringing us closer to God so that we will live a life that is pleasing to Him. So I want to invite you to join us on Wednesday evenings at 6:45 p.m. in Life Application Bible Study so that we can learn more about what it means to discern the voice of God. I look forward to seeing you, and I look forward to studying with you. Thank you, and God bless.